Hi, I'm Max Walker&Williams, and today we are having a look at Hedera Hashgraph versus the Casper Network. I've been asked by a lot of people on Twitter, at @MWalker&Williams, to cover the Casper Network, and I'm so glad that they did, because it is a really interesting project, and I had to do a real deep dive on this one because Casper is a little bit like an onion. You've got to peel away the layers in order to get all of the information, which I think is a bit of a disadvantage. Projects like Casper want to make it as easy as possible and sort of really shout about in this crowded market all of the fantastic things that are happening on their network and some of the great selling points about the network that we're going to cover in this video. But I had to do a little bit more digging than a normal person would, should have to in order to understand the network. But now, thankfully, we've created this video so you won't have to. You can watch this video and hopefully make an informed decision on which you think is the superior project and which is going to run cryptographic technology in the future. Okay, jumping straight into it. So the price as of doing my research for Casper, for CSPR, the Casper token, was just shy, a tenth of a cent shy of 3 cents, or 2.5 pence in good old English money. Hedera at the same time, so Hbar, Hedera's token at the same time was 4 cents and 7, or just shy, a tenth of a penny shy of 4 pence. So 4 pence versus 2.5 pence in terms of price, and 47 versus 29 in cent. The total supply, so the total circulating supply at the moment is 10.45 billion coins, with a market cap of 1,082,000 for Hedera and 308 million for Casper. Circulating supply 10.45 billion tokens, as I said, with a total supply of 11.244,832,694 billion tokens in total. So interesting there, because not only is Hedera at quite a bit higher price, sort of double the price of CSPR at the moment, the market cap, which is the amount of total tokens you're able to buy, times multiplied by the price of a single coin, gives you the market cap. And the market cap is considerably more than almost 4 times more for Hedera than it is for Casper, because there are a lot more tokens, 5 times more tokens. So the price is double, the market cap is almost 5 times. The all-time high of Casper is $1.36. So even if, as I always say in videos, if you want to be pretty cautious, the way to look at future prices, and I don't like speculation because it is just speculation, it's just guessing. And you can have a slightly more educated guess, but it's still a guess. And your guess is as good as my guess, which is why I don't really make price predictions, because what's the point? And they can be incredibly unhelpful and unhealthy too. But so what I do like to do, because people keep asking me about price predictions, is I just look at a token's all-time high. Because if you look at where something is now and where it has been in the past, there's a fair or certainly better chance of that coin returning to its all-time high. So I like to assume that no coin is ever going to break its all-time high when I'm looking at investments. And so the all-time high of Casper is a substantial $1.36. So from where we are at the moment, it represents itself, if it does get back to that all-time high, as a fantastic investment opportunity. But there is a little bit of a discrepancy on the all-time high. So if you go onto Coinbase and type in Casper, it says in writing that the all-time high is $1.36, but the all-time high on the chart that you can track is $40. And then the all-time high, according to Gecko, is $1.33, so there's a 3 cent difference there. And it also says that on Tuesday, May the 11th, for less than 24 hours, it did reach $40. But I've ignored that because if something is, if something's 2 years old and for less than 24 hours it was a certain price, I think we can almost discount that. And there's loads of reasons why. It's almost a whole nother video of why that should be discounted. So the true, in my opinion, all-time high is between $1.36 and $1.33, which still represents the price today of 2.5 pence or 3 cents, a fantastic opportunity indeed. So the all-time high, 9th to the 5th of, okay, so sorry, this isn't price, this is Google Trends. So I always go on about Google Trends and the importance of Google Trends because it gives you a glimpse as to what's happening, or more than a glimpse in fact, of what's happening in the world and what the world is interested in. And what it's interested in is what it's using and what might, rise in price, rise in influence, rise in use. So the all-time high of Casper was between the 9th and the 5th of May 2001, and that was 100. So again, it's not a percentage, it's Google rates the interaction and the interest and the search for Casper as a cryptographic, in the cryptographic context, not the ghost, of course. It warrants it 100 at its highest peak, and then it gives it numbers off that 100 highest. And the 100 highest was between the 9th and the 5th of May 2001, and today it is at 10. And so that isn't a great sign, to be fair. Although the entire crypto market is down, Casper is proportionately down more. So for example, at the time of doing the research on the same day, Hedera was at 43. So all-time high 100 for Casper, today 10. All-time high for Hedera 100, today 43, which is still a ways down from where it has been in terms of interest, but it's still got 4 times more interest than Casper at the moment. So Twitter, they've got 178.2 thousand followers, and Hedera's got 254.6 thousand followers. So 254,000 followers versus 178, which is quite a bit more. But I realized something. Hedera has been on Twitter a lot longer, and so it's had longer to accumulate more followers. So to make it really fair, I divided how many followers each project has, and then divided it by how many days they've been on Twitter. And that gives a fairer picture. So how many followers are they accumulating a day? And so far, Casper has been attracting 3,970 new followers per month for every month they've been on Twitter. And Hedera has been attracting 4,100 followers per month since they've been on Twitter. So you could argue that the timing was better because Hedera was earlier, but then you could also argue that crypto as a general topic, as an industry, is growing, and so the later you come, the quicker you should grow. So it's just interesting, and they're very, very close, 4,100 versus 3,970. So they're quite on par there, and the difference between the 250,000 and the 178,000 is down just to the length of time that Hedera has been on Twitter. And all of this stuff matters, by the way, because you can have the best technology in the world, you can have a cure to cancer, you can have whatever you want, you can have the most amazing product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, if nobody's engaging with it, if nobody's trialing it, using it, talking about it, then it's all for nothing. The mainnet of Casper Network launched in March of 2021. It was founded by Jack Mills, Meta Palekar, and Neural Manohar, based in Switzerland, which I think is a really positive thing, because you see some businesses, cryptographic and non-cryptographic businesses, companies, people who have addresses that are in countries that are a little bit, let's say, fishy. They don't have strict laws, or they don't have some laws at all that I think most people agree are fair and make sense. And so it's just good to know that they're in a place, Switzerland is a bit of a tax haven, and that's a whole nother moral debate we can have. But from a pragmatic business point of view, it's good that they have an address and a place that you can go and ask them questions if and hold them answerable to certain things. And they're not hiding behind a shell corp, or they're not in a place, as I say, that is a bit of a Wild West sort of situation. So I think, and Switzerland's also one of the power hubs of business in the world. So I think that's a really good place for a project that you might be considering investing in to be based. So the architecture of the cryptographic technology, the platform, was designed, and the architect for Casper Labs was Jack Mills. Now, some people say that Jack was a co-founder, other people say that he wasn't a co-founder, and then actually, and from what I can find, he was actually hired in for 1 year to help design the network. He was hired to develop the tech for 1 year, and then left to be the COO of Portal Project, which is a blockchain DeFi project. Jack is a super impressive person. I had a good look into Jack, and he's a very unusual person because there's a lot of super impressive people in the cryptographic space, but Jack is a very unusual animal in that he is incredibly gifted and talented in computer science, clearly in creating cryptographic technologies and projects and platforms, DeFi and all that sort of thing. And there are a lot of people who are, equally good as Jack at that. But at the same time, he's also got a very good business mind. And that's quite a rare combination. So Jack also has a Master of Business Administration, an MBA, from no other than Stanford. So really, really impressive guy, knows his tech stuff, but isn't sort of like, a bit of an introvert and sort of keeps himself to himself and doesn't think about the bigger picture and all that sort of thing, just concentrates on the code. No, he's also a master of business administration. And that's a really powerful thing, couple of abilities to have. They're a POS network, which means proof of stake rather than a proof of work. And as time goes on, we'll hear less and less about proof of work blockchains because proof of stake is far and away superior. And I don't think anybody is arguing that. If you don't know the difference between proof of work networks and proof of stake networks, have a look at some of the previous videos that we've done in the archive where I talk specifically about those two. But I won't bore people who watch my stuff regularly with going into the difference between proof of work and proof of stake. But they're a proof of stake network. They're a blockchain, of course. They are BFT secure, which stands for Byzantine fault tolerant. So they are Byzantine fault tolerant secure, but they aren't ABFT, which is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant. So they're two different layers of security, and it's unarguable on this specific point that Hedera Hashgraph has got the superior level of security when it comes to fault tolerance. Casper Network is BFT, Hedera Hashgraph is asynchronous BFT. Casper has 100 validators. Those are the computers that run the network, but that is capped. You might think, well, that's not many, and you'd be right, and Hedera at the moment has less, but both have plans to increase that number in time. So it's capped at 100, but it will be increased in the future. Interestingly, you only need 32 gigabytes of RAM to run a validator on the Casper network. And the reason that's interesting is because it's hugely scalable. It's a relatively small amount of computing power, which means you could effectively run a validator from your mobile phone almost. So really, really interesting. And that's quite cool that it facilitates that ramping up. Hedera, I don't know the specific gigabyte RAM required for running a node, but I do know that it can be done from a phone, and so, or even a Raspberry Pi, which is a very small type of computer. So I know that it's probably quite a bit lower than that even, but it's as good as makes no difference for the purposes of this comparison. They complete 2,500 transactions per block. So there's 2,500 transactions put into a block before they move on to the next one. But once sharding is introduced, will ramp up, but not really a fair comparison until then. So at the moment, Hedera's throttled at 10,000 transactions per second, which means that they're ensuring that that's delivering what they promised it would before they release that cap and then allow more transactions per second. And Casper is effectively doing the same thing, but at 2,500. But to compare the two is unfair because they're both in the middle of building something. So it's like comparing a Ferrari and a Lamborghini, but they're both in different processes of being built. Well, you need to wait until, if you're going to compare their speed, you need to wait until they both have their engines fitted, their turbos fitted, before you can truly compare that. So I think we steer clear of the transactions per second just at this moment in time, to be fair and transparent. So the cost, this is a very important one, and it is something we can compare because the white paper suggests that it's fixed, certainly for the medium term. The cost per transaction is 0.301 CSPR per transaction. That's for a very simple transaction, like transferring money from one wallet, from transferring Casper token CSPR from one wallet to another. It'll cost you 1,000th of a Casper. With Hedera, it's the same number, but in dollars instead of Hbar. And there's a slight advantage to Hedera there because Casper, and I will get to it in a bit, do claim that their cost of fees for big business will be secure and will be manageable in the future, meaning that they're predictable. But there's a process to go through that doesn't exist on Hedera and doesn't need to, because the cost is in fiat. And that's quite an important point because it's not for you and I, but if you're, Google or someone like that, or a massive Ford manufacturing and they want to track their entire ecosystem on the Casper network, they have to buy the tokens in order to pay the transaction fees. But it's hard, there's a process to go through in order to make that predictable. Because if it becomes a substantial cost, and even at this price, even at 1,000th of one, if you're doing 10 million transactions a minute, that quickly adds up. And so it isn't something just to be ignored when looking at institutional investment, when looking at use cases at an institutional and massive corporation level. Whereas with Hedera, you can say, how many transactions are we going to do? Do we think in the next month? That many. What is the cost? That times that number by that number. That's how much money we need in the bank put to one side in order to facilitate those transactions. Easy peasy. You don't need to do any futures contracts or whatever it might be, whatever system they put in place in order to make the cost of transacting on the network predictable for big business. The website, casper.network. Casper.com, by the way, is a mattress website. Casper.network is very good. And I think this is really important. I probably overemphasize this a little bit, but websites to me are very, very important, particularly in technology and particularly in today's world. Why? Because most of these businesses, if not all of them, don't have a physical shop. It's not like Victoria's Secret or Marks and Spencer's or Walmart, where you can go in and get a feel for the business in the way they display themselves to the world. Their storefront, their shop that you can walk in and experience and kind of get a feel for what they're all about is their website. So if, for example, with some other projects that I've looked at in previous videos, you know, your Hedera Hashgraph and one of the founders wearing a Bitcoin t-shirt, it's not a great message. So, and that's a true story. So it's not a great message. So their website is, but to me, websites are important. That's not to say that scams or whatever don't have great websites, but it's a good starting point. So it's a very artistic website. I find it hard though on their website, as professional as it is and sort of how engaging the website is, it is quite hard to find hard facts. And it's really hard to find like solid concrete numbers. And it needs updating. And then I've put use cases. So when you go on the website, if you want to know how many transactions per second you're coming into this completely blind, your best mate told you that Casper's a good investment and, you know, maybe if you're a developer, you should be building on the network or whatever. You go on the website and you just want to know the facts. Top line, what are the facts? What's it going to cost me? What's the cost per transaction? How many transactions per second can this network currently facilitate? You know, what's the speed of those transactions and those sort of top lines. Now, with Hedera, their website, you know, is pretty smart. You might like it aesthetically, you might not, that's personal opinion, but it's very smart and very professional. You go on there and there is literally a spreadsheet, a 4-line spreadsheet that says, this is what Ethereum does, this is what Bitcoin does, this is what Ripple does, this is what we do. And then it says, number of transactions per second, capped at 10,000. Cost to do it. And it's just easy peasy. And you go, right, that's enough to get my attention. Wow, okay, so for what I need 8,000 transactions per second. I need it to cost this. I need the energy consumption to be less than this because of my, you know, my eco credentials. Tick, 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 yes, I want to know more. And then people go and look into the white paper, developers look at the developer thing, they look at the different chats around it, the ecosystem. But that doesn't start unless you can find out the basic facts. Because everybody has a certain parameter that anything they're investing in, building on, whatever it might be, buying in a shop, it has to meet a certain basic criteria. If it doesn't meet that criteria, they're not going to look into it any deeper. And so if you can't find that very simple, basic top-line information, easy peasy, people will just lose interest. And I really believe that the Casper Network, and other networks too, will have lost. And you might say, well, they're frivolous. You know, the fact that they can't even be bothered to look at the transactions per second, are they really a serious investor? And I don't think it is. There will be a case of that. But I also believe that there are a lot of projects out there, a lot of projects, and at least 20 of them are really, really solid. And so in a market where there's a lot of competition, so it isn't that the person is lazy or is not really an investor or a buyer or a true developer. It's just that everybody's incredibly busy. Attention spans are shortening. And you've got to get your point across to the consumer, the potential customer, as easily and as quickly as possible. And Casper definitely falls down on that point, which is a massive shame. For example, they have a tab, it says future-proof or about us, and you click on it and it says, and this is a direct quote, low and predictable fees. Okay, so what are they? And low to who? Do you think they're low, or is that a vote everyone's had? Are they low compared to what? Low compared to Bitcoin, or because it's a low compared to Ethereum, or low compared to Hedera Hashgraph? So it just says low and predictable fees. Then it says fully decentralized and scalable. But that's it, just that line. Okay, well, that's great, but how? Tell me why you're decentralized or how you're decentralized, and tell me why you're scalable. Because I'm looking for scale. I need, in my mind, my business is going to be really, really scalable. Wow, how? Then you've got to do a load of digging to find out how. And by the way, nobody's not saying this, so they're not going to say they're not scalable. The other thing is it needs updating, because as you'll find in the video in a little bit of time, there are some fantastic use cases on the Casper Network. But on the website, if you look at use cases, their sort of top use cases at the moment is Casper Punks, which is an NFT ghost project, sort of pictures of pixelated ghosts. We have a very similar project on Hedera Hashgraph. There are these sort of pixelated ghosts on pretty much every network as an NFT. IP, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but you know, as you'll see, it's not very diverse. The 3 top cases are all NFT based, and that's important, but let's have a bit of variety, and let's also have some slightly larger use cases. If if I'm big business, I want to see other big businesses engaging on the network. IPWE, this is a really interesting business, and I think this is a fantastic idea, and it's novel. I have not seen this anywhere else. So IPWE is a company that is taking IP, intellectual property, and turning them into NFTs, therefore making it far, far easier to buy, sell, trade, store, and prove ownership of intellectual property. This is a fantastic company idea. I don't know how well the business is doing. I'm here to talk about Casper, not about IPWE, but it really got me interested, and I nearly went down a rabbit hole of having a look at IPWE, and it's on my to-do list to have a look, because that is a potentially massive business and a fantastic use. What a fantastic use of NFTs in real life. To digitalizing IP, certificates of authenticity, to be able to buy, sell, trade IP as NFTs. You own the NFT, you own the intellectual property. Massive use case. Wise.art. So this is an NFT sales platform. Pretty much every cryptographic platform has at least one, if not several, NFT sales platforms. You go on there. It's a really smart website. It's really, really well designed, very professional, very cool. And it's wise.art. You go on there and you can buy and sell NFTs by various artists and so on. So is it unusual? No. Is it good? Yes. But does it make Casper? Does it present Casper in all its glory? Absolutely not. So an update on that would be really beneficial, I believe. So Casper has a private sidechain, which is very important for business and commerce. So I've been asked this question actually a couple of times by a few different people, and they say, how are big businesses going to be able to transfer information if everything can be seen or watched on the blockchain or on the Hashgraph? And it's a really fair and reasonable question. It's a very good common sense question. And the reason it's possible is the private sidechains. So a company, a business, particularly massive companies, they want to be able to transfer information, a drawing of a new concept for an architectural competition that they don't want other people seeing because clearly they don't want people stealing their idea, intellectual property, designs of things, products, a new iPhone or whatever, and they don't want anyone outside of the company being able to see this, but they want to transfer that data with their new supplier, Casper Network or Hedera Hashgraph. So how do they do it? Because no big business is going to want to have, if they don't have to, have 2 systems. One for boring stuff, just back and forth, distributing payroll or whatever it might be, something that they don't mind, how many customers have entered a shop or something, information that they don't mind being in the general public, or they have no choice because they're PLC, the publicly traded company, and then internal sensitive information that is important for the business's success, that they don't want leaking, HR reports and all that sort of thing. So internal disciplinaries and all that sort of stuff. That information has to be stored and it has to be transferred between departments securely. And as I say, big businesses don't want to have run 2 softwares if they don't have to. But so Hedera you can build your own sidechain and you can pretty much mold it into whatever you want it to look like. So it can be half private, half not private. You can wrap it in something so that certain people can see it and other people can't. Very, very clever. And that's really important for big business adoption. And Casper has a private sidechain. So that's very important for big business. Impressive list of investors. And investors are important because they tell us a little bit about how they feel, about how the big business and the VC, venture capitalist, and investment firms feel about a project. They'll presumably, I'd like to think, they do due diligence, they look into it, and then if they like what they see, they invest. Impressive list of investors, important because it's faith. So these big businesses that have become very successful, and they do make mistakes, of course, they invested in FTX, which collapsed, but they've also, you can't deny that they've become very successful, and through that success, hopefully they've learned what a successful business might look like upon inception. So Arrington, XRP Capital, Blockchain, Hashkey, Digital Strategies, Rocktree, and the Acutus Group. So you might not have heard of many of these people, but they are massive in the cryptographic, in the investment scene generally, but specifically in the cryptographic industry, they are massive investors. Companies building on the network. So Threefold.io, these guys have got a really interesting idea, and I'm going to follow them because it's going to be really interesting to see if they pull it off. But they're basically trying to design a new version of the internet, completely reinvent the internet, sort of the Web 3.0 that we've all been talking about, and they're doing it at a very base level. So at the moment, we have the likes of Google, and Google have a bunker, or many bunkers in the world, and in that bunker, in the middle of nowhere, are a load of computers. And those computers are the servers that run the network Google. And so when you type in Google, I want to see this website, your computer connects to their servers, which then shows you the website. Threefold, but that's very centralized, and Google can control what their servers do and don't show, and there's loads of downsides to that, or potential downsides to the way that is operated, the downsides of which are pretty obvious and have been talked about a lot in the media, particularly recently. Threefold.io are proposing to create a brand new internet where there isn't a bunker in the middle of nowhere with a load of servers in it, but actually all of the servers on the network, i.e. your computer, my laptop, and so on and so forth, are the servers of the internet. And what's in it for them is not just you might have the moral preference to go with Threefold.io rather than Google, for example, but there are also financial rewards through farming and through receiving rewards through advertisements that revenue that Threefold generate from adverts get paid. A part of it gets paid to the people running the network. So it's very much like a cryptocurrency sort of model in its own right. Computers run the network, people do things on the network. You get paid as for mining, for running the network, you get paid a small percentage of the cost that those people have incurred in doing so. And so it's a very similar thing, but instead of a cryptocurrency, it's actually the internet, so it's information. Really, really interesting idea, and I wish them all the best. It's a really exciting project. Some big companies looking at Threefold.io. There are a lot of businesses that are looking at Threefold.io and thinking, we want to get in early to be a part of this. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I wouldn't want Google as an enemy. They're pretty powerful and they've got a lot to lose. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there and how that plays out. Because if Google can't beat them, they'll buy them. Covalent. So Covalent, COVALENT creating APIs for different crypto platforms. Exciting team behind them. These guys have got an incredible team. Have a look at their website, which is on the board, and I'll put a link in the description below. It's their name, but with HQ in it, .com. And these guys, APIs are the way effectively computers talk to each other. And so there isn't your bank account and you've got a direct debit and your mortgage gets paid every month. There isn't a little old lady with a hat or a man with a little hat checking that you've got the money in the account. Yes, you have. Right, it's due today, and then make the payment for you on your behalf. Obviously, there are computers doing it for you. And then a computer confirms that they've received the payment and it hasn't bounced back. And if it does bounce back, there's another computer to send you a text message or an email saying you didn't have sufficient funds. And all of that happens through APIs automatically. This company is looking to create APIs cross-platform, cross-network, which is really, really exciting. And it's a fantastic idea. And I got really excited, and then I got even more excited when I saw the team behind them, because they're not just a bunch of dreamers with a great idea. They've actually got the team that may even pull this off. So that'll be a really interesting one, especially with the way that I believe the cryptographic community industry will blossom and succeed is through collaboration, is through integration of cross-network collaborations. So very shortly, the products being created on cryptographic technology will become bigger and more important than the actual platform themselves. So at the moment, everybody's for Hedera, for Casper, for Bitcoin, whatever it might be. But in time, you don't care which computer J.K. Rowling used to write Harry Potter, because the book is far bigger than Microsoft Word or than Apple. So nobody cares, and nobody goes into the shop saying, I only buy books written on Microsoft Word. But at the moment in our space, because it's new, people say, I only buy NFTs that have been created on Solana. But it won't matter in time. You'll just want to buy some footballer's NFT and you won't care. And certainly people coming new into the space, they just want to buy Johnny Depp's NFT. They're not really interested or even understand or care how it was processed. They just want the product. And products will quickly outgrow the platforms themselves. And I think that's a really healthy and inevitable thing. Okay, so what else have we got? Terra Virtua, so Virtua, Virtua.com, Virtua.com. Terra Virtua is a collectibles market in the NFT marketplace like VV. So it's a buy and sell shop, a bit like eBay or VV if you're familiar. I've done interviews with those guys, great team, and I've covered them a couple of times. One of the videos was one of my sort of very earliest videos about Akomi and VV. And this is a very similar thing. It's an NFT marketplace, but for collectibles, so 3D models and that sort of thing, rather than 1D pictures. Metaverse coming soon. Games already live. So they've gone in a slightly different path. So VV have concentrated on doing one thing incredibly well, which is the buying and selling of collectibles for some of the most well-known brands in the world, like Disney. And these guys have a very respectable NFT collectibles marketplace, but they're also looking at taking that to the next level, which is through the metaverse. So presumably soon you'll be able to buy Winnie the Pooh, and then you'll be able to actually go for a walk with your character in a 3D digital land. So in the metaverse, you'll be able to walk around and play games with whatever you've bought. You're wearing whatever you've bought in the marketplace, you can then take it into the game. So rather than waiting for that to happen throughout the industry, these guys are trying to do it in their own niche, which is very cool. And they've already got some NFT-based games, which are pretty decent, already live. So again, none of these guys appear to be dreamers because it's easy to talk. Talk is cheap. But these guys are actually delivering stuff or parts of stuff that they say they're going to. So that's another big one to watch. Big Token. It gives you a share of what advertisers pay for you to watch their ads. So this was a fantastic idea. And the reason I say was is because it's one of those ideas that was so good and so relatively easy to set up as a business that so many people have piled in, it's diluted the opportunity massively, I believe. There was even a guy on the UK's version of Shark Tank, which is Dragon's Den, pitching one of these ideas years ago. And it is a great idea. And the idea is basically, rather than you sitting on your laptop being shown adverts for wheelbarrows or tampons or whatever it might be that's completely non-relevant to you, they used to obviously mine your data, and that goes back to Google being centralized and doing whatever they like within reason. And they sort of try and track you as best they can to try and understand through your purchases and that sort of thing and your interests and what you look at on YouTube to try and show you products that might be interesting to you. You could argue that's beneficial because if you're going to watch adverts, you may as well be exposed to ones that half interest you. You might come across a product you've really been looking for. But a lot of people aren't happy with the way that information was gathered. And so as that becomes less and less prevalent in terms of tracking people online, advertisers have to find another way to find out what you want in order to be able to sell it to you. And one of the ways to do that, which was an ingenious idea when it was first conceived, is to bring you in on the game. So to say to you, look, I'm an advertiser platform. I say to advertisers, Coca-Cola, if you give me £8, I'll show your advert to all these people, £8 each, all these people, and if they click on your advert, £10. But I'm showing it to people who've never drunk Coca-Cola, and I'm showing it, and it's just sort of like a shotgun kind of attempt. But what if I said, okay, give me £10, I'll give everybody who's interested in Coca-Cola and potentially going to buy Coca-Cola, a willing participant in this exchange to watch this advert, I'll give you £2. I can tell Coca-Cola that the people who are viewing the advert have chosen to watch what you have to say, and you get £2 of the transaction and I get the 8. So it's a really, really powerful model. And if you're going to be exposed to adverts, whether you like it or not, you may as well watch ones that you are, are relevant or at least semi-relevant to you. And even better, if you can get paid some of the revenue that the advertisers generate, that the advertising agencies generate from the advertisers, why not? Would you watch a 15-second Coca-Cola ad for 25 pence? Or watch a wheelbarrow advert for nothing, but you've got to watch one of them while you're online? It's a great concept, but there are a lot of businesses trying to do this. So again, I wish Big Token all the luck in the world. They're trying to do this concept through cryptographic technology, which is great, but there are loads of businesses trying to capitalize on this opportunity. The developers. So there isn't too much talk around developers on this specific sort of use cases, conversations, Telegram, Twitter and that sort of thing. But one of the ones that kept coming up was dapperradar.com. This is one of the coolest websites, one of the coolest apps I've seen in the cryptographic space across all platforms.
So dapperradar.com. I will put links to all of these websites in the link in the description below. Dapperradar.com, very cool app that allows you to track, buy, sell crypto like Coinbase, but also allows you the same for cross-network NFTs. So there are loads of apps. You can go on Coinbase. You used to be able to go on FTX, but you can go on Coinbase. You can go on Gecko, and they basically, or much like the stock market, it's an app on your phone, and you go on there, and it tells you what's the best performing, what your wallet is doing, what your portfolio, how it's performing, up and down charts. I haven't seen one that does that for NFTs as well. Or I've seen an app that does that with the crypto, all the different cryptos, and then it just does NFTs for the platform that it's built on. So you might have a wallet on Solana, for example, an app, and that app shows you what all cryptos are doing. You can buy them, you can sell them. It shows you your wallet, you can store them, and it'll show you NFTs for just on the Solana project. These guys show you all of the different cryptos and how they're performing, but also all of the NFTs, which again comes back to the interoperability. It's amazing because again, nobody is going to care. If you want to collect all the footballers' NFTs, and he mints on Solana, she mints on Ethereum, then you're going to need like 8, 9, 12, 15, 20 different wallets. It's crazy. Whereas with these guys, you can have all of those NFTs displayed in one place, regardless of which, within reason, regardless of which platform they're created on. And it will track the price, what the lowest price an NFT of that type has sold for most recently, whether it's up, whether it's down. So exactly what we see for stocks and shares and now crypto, we're starting to see for NFTs. And these guys have done it in a really, the user interface is fantastic. Really great company, one to watch. Validators and staking. Some very large names, such as Everstake, Staked, and Hue by Pool. And there's an 8% reward. Now, this again comes down to hard facts. A little bit of digging to do here because I've seen 10%, I've seen circa 9.5%. The figure that's repeated the most, and actually there's fees included on some of the different third parties. When you net it down, I think it's pretty fair. There's a little bit of wiggle room. You could argue this number if you wanted to, but just speaking generally across the board, the reward net in your back pocket is 8%. Hedera Hashgraph's reward is capped at 6.5%. So depending on how much you stake and so on and so forth, for how long and compounding and things, if we just take two numbers that we can compare, I think a 6.5% for Hedera is a fair number. I haven't heard of anybody achieving much less than that. And I think 8% is fair for the Casper Network. So there is quite particularly if you've got quite a bit of money to invest, 2% at the minute really, really does make a difference. And last year, 2%, between 6 and 8% in the UK would have meant the difference between losing a little bit to inflation at 6.5%, according to the Bank of England, that is, and actually making a small profit. So it's the difference between a profit and a loss is the difference between Hedera Hashgraph's 6.5% and Casper Network's 8%. So that's interesting because that's quite sizable difference on the rate of return. And that's even more important if you're an investor like me, because we generally tend to buy and hold for a longer term. And if you're holding for a longer term, the problem with silver, gold, these assets, they're not assets, they're investments, is that they provide no cash flow, which is what makes them investments. If they're assets, an asset to me is something that may or may not go up in capital appreciation, but pays you a wage that you can go and spend at Tesco's or Walmart. And so crypto is fantastic because it's an asset, not an investment, in that you can invest in the tokens and hope that they go up in price in the future, but you can also earn an income in the meantime, which is fantastic. And so how much income you can earn is really, really important, particularly if you're holding for a longer period. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, take all of your money you've got, all of your income, all of your wealth, and buy silver with it and see how long you can last without food. So it's super, super important. So I decided to spice the board up a little bit for this one. Grants available for devs/builders through Dev times DAO. Total of 1.6 billion coins of CSPR coins, which is a sizable percentage of the overall supply, which is just over 11 billion. So it's about 9% of the total supply. No, more, sorry, 1.6. So it's more like 19% of the total supply. So they've really set aside some money to grow the ecosystem. And but this is a very cool thing, and why I got excited with the green pen. This is a cool thing that these guys have got that Hedera don't. So at the moment, if you want to get a grant with Hedera, Hedera's massive plus is that the size of their grant is the biggest in the ecosystem by some margin. It's massive. You know, at the time of conception, I think it was worth in fiat about $1 billion. You know, it was really, really unheard of. It was massive. That's like a massive signal to the community that we want to engage and we want to help you grow our network. It's not just the money, it's a lot about the money, but it's also the intent that they acknowledge that they need people and they're looking to help people grow their businesses and their ideas on their network. And so these guys have got a decent size, it's much smaller than Hedera's, but one thing I like, and you might not because there are good and bad to it, one thing I do like about their system is that the community votes on the applications. So with Hedera, you fill out an application, you go through a process, there are people there to help you, and I have to say that the Hbar Foundation that is in charge of the grants seems, from what I've heard speaking to people, having been putting in an application recently myself, the process is super, super straightforward and there are people there to help you do that. But it is decided by a body you have that I'm aware of. You have no feedback or input on the discussion as it happens, and people presumably vote, and then they agree terms, or they deny it, or they ask more questions, or whatever it might be. But it's an arm's length transaction. You, the community, the applicant, are not involved in that process, other than you submit, we say yes or no, or terms. With the Casper Network, or certainly with DAO, the community vote, which I think is really cool. Now, it is cool and it is engaging, and I don't know if they vote on every single application, and the reason this is a bit of a bad thing is because how informed is the community? Are they just like pressing a button, or are they taking real time to study these applications and actually weed out some of the scams, some of the rug pulls? And not just that, are they aware of the wider picture? Because let's say, for example, 90% of the applicants are NFT guys looking to build, and girls looking to build NFT projects. Well, we can't say yes to all of them, doesn't matter how good they are, because we only have 10% of the money to diversify into DeFi, decentralized finance, or some of these guys that are doing things that aren't NFT based. And so you don't want to have too many use cases of one thing on any network. And so, because you then become pigeonholed and boxed in, much like Solana is with NFTs, you know, they're not, that's their bag. And the minute, if that's taken off them, they're dead. You know, whereas if you've got 10 different sort of specialties, you can lose one and 90% of the network is still flourishing. And so I'm not sure that this level of power, if it is all applications across the board, should be in the hands of such a wide and diverse community, just because I don't know how much knowledge, time, and experience they invest or have to invest in making these decisions. You know, 1,000 of the votes are just kids just pressing whichever one they like the logo. You know, so I'm a little bit nervous about that, but I do think the idea of it is very, very cool. Right, why is there a fire on the board? So there's a fire on the board because at this point, before I got to here, this to me looked like a cryptographic platform like many other cryptographic platforms I've covered. You know, it was an XDC, a Quant. They're all solid projects that I believe have a pretty secure future, in the cryptographic space, in the industry. And like Ripple is finance, they'll settle down and they'll all find their place, and they'll just have different amounts of market share, depending on how well they advertise, who adopts them, and so on and so forth in this race that we're in at the moment. But they all have a place. There are, of course, projects that are a joke or fall away, there are scams and so on, but the ones I generally cover are especially more recently, they're all sort of starting to pull away from all the junk, and so they're very, very similar in their offering. Up until this point, Hedera had won this by some margin. And the reason being is because when you look at security, it's not as secure, in my opinion. Well, in fault tolerance, it's a fact. It's not as secure. They're sort of a little bit behind Hedera in terms of adoption and use case and that sort of thing. But then I started to look into Casper Labs. Things get very interesting when you look at Casper Labs. This is the only project, and I'm including Hedera Hashgraph in this, of course. This is the only project I've come across where I've looked at the project, the platform, Casper Labs. I've looked at the people behind it. I've looked at the foundation that they have, or variation of a foundation where they have grant money and applications, that sort of thing, and then I look at that. And then look at the community, and I look at that. And somewhere along there, I look at the business that most of these platforms have, that's their own in-house business, that's creating products and for people to use in their ecosystem. So creating a better version of a wallet or creating new technologies. I have not to date, before checking out Casper, I have not seen a Casper Labs, a Swirlds Labs, a whatever it might be, XDC Foundation, whatever it might be, I haven't seen a labs as impressive as theirs, as impressive as this one. It's very, very interesting, and actually makes Casper as an overall offering far, far more interesting and a ways different from anything else I've seen. Not necessarily better, but definitely more interesting. And there's a lot of potential there that's really tangible. Things get very interesting when you look at Casper Labs. Meet the team. So when you go onto the website, I'll put the link in the description below. I haven't written it on the boards, but I think it's casperlabs.com or .io, I'm not sure, but I'll put a link in the description. There's 44 people working in the engineering department. 44. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of engineers, a lot of incredibly intelligent people working towards a common goal. That is a powerful, with a point on it, that is a powerful arrow. Working in the engineering department, and it's a who's who of leading engineers in the cryptographic space. And you have to remember that in the cryptographic space, as it grows, and because it's so interesting, and because the technology is absolutely undeniable, whether you agree with any specific part, NFTs are junk, or meaning the JPEGs, or I disagree with this bit, or I disagree with that bit. The underlying mathematics, the technology is undeniable if you understand what it is. And so these engineers and really smart people clearly understand what it is, and they're all piling into the space. So the bar for talent is very, very high in this space. And so to be sort of considered leading in this space, you really are the best of the best. A who's who of leading engineers in the cryptographic space. Girls and guys from Harvard, Dropbox, Stanford, Berkeley, Facebook, Adobe, a couple of Hedera Hashgraph Governing Council members there, Microsoft, etc. And so really, really serious. There's a lot of them, and every one of them is super impressive. Really, really exciting opportunities there. Okay, so moving forward in the news. So how is Casper Labs portrayed in the news? Are they talked about at all? That sort of leads back to the Google Trends, but this is a bit more specific, niche news, important stuff. Casper Labs are joining China's BSN, a blockchain partner business service network. So BSN is Business Service Network, and the Chinese government have set up this body to help the adoption, backed by the Chinese government, to accelerate blockchain adoption in China and beyond. This was really surprising to me because the Chinese government, generally speaking, are quite sort of, well, not quite, they're very sort of closed about, what they disclose, what they're doing. And they've never really been, in my opinion, very outside focused, especially when you consider most of their GDP is from export. But they didn't even publish how many people have been affected by COVID or something. They're quite cagey. And so, but they were really, really sort of modern thinking, forward thinking in this, certainly the way they described what this project is. And the project has been set up, as I've said, to help people in China and around the world, but specifically in China, to develop and onboard customers and clients and businesses onto blockchain cryptographic-backed technology. And clearly they've got a lot of money, the Chinese government, and a lot of power, so if they push something in a direction, it goes a long way. And Casper Labs are right in the middle of that. CasperStats.io. So it's a really interesting site. You can see the 100 current nodes of 206 total on their site. And as I alluded to earlier, it's capped at 100. But Casper Stats, that's CasperStats.io, link in the description below. If you go on that website, it's a really interesting website. And you can actually see 100, but you can see 206 nodes and the 100 that are currently operating, working away. You can also see the blocks being filled with the transactions, which is really cool. Just something really visceral to look at. You can actually see a digital representation of the blocks being filled with transactions, and then moving on to the next block. Really, really cool sort of bit of interest to have a look at. You can also see their rich list, top wallets, how much they hold, their public key, when they were last active, etc. Which I thought was another quite community-focused, engaged thing. Now, some people might feel a little bit uncomfortable about that, but you can't have it all ways. You know, if you want to be decentralized and open source and open and things, then certain things have got to be open. And one of those is where all the coins are. That's very important for the likes of nodes and voting and so on and so forth. So it's very important to know where all the coins are. And so you need to know where all the coins are. And you can have a look at their rich list, which is really funny. If you're interested in knowing the richest of the rich list, the highest valued wallet is valued at $49.9 million and is the largest wallet by quite some stretch. And it was last used, that's received CSPR or sent CSPR a year ago. So it's obviously somebody just sat there waiting for the moon, waiting for the price to go up by some. Okay, where are we up to? Regularly mentioned in the right places. Okay, so regularly mentioned in the right places means, again, it means about the niche sort of, because there's two different sort of measures, if you like. There's how much the world is talking about a particular thing, and that's where Google Trends comes in. But also, there are places where it's important to be mentioned. So this is important across, like, sort of, you know, across the world is important, but also being mentioned in the right rooms, on the right papers is important. And Casper is getting mentioned in a lot of those right places. In financial papers, such as the Nasdaq's news, they've been mentioned several times in there, and I think they've also had a feature in Nasdaq News. They presented in Davos at the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum, if you're not familiar, is like rocket fuel for all of the conspiracy theorists in the world. It is a meeting that happens annually every year in Davos, in Switzerland, where these guys are based. And it's basically a meeting of world leaders, but not just world leaders, but billionaires, the elite, the 1% of the 1%, like the top decision makers, power players in the world, all meet up in one place every year and have a chat. And then there's sub meetings of that and the discussions and you know, people get to know each other and networking and stuff. It must be a fantastic event to attend. You never know. And they have speakers, of course. They have speakers talking about, you know, charitable stuff and new technologies. And sure enough, Casper presented at the last meeting. So at least some of those world leaders, I mean, there's over 50 heads of state at this meeting. Some of them will have been in the room when that president, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them will certainly have been in that room and been awake and been sober. So we're really whittling the numbers down, but some of them will have been in that room listening to this speech by Casper. So it's about exposure and getting your name to the right people. It's always about who you know. Making the price of transactions predictable through filters, through futures is messy. So this last point is just the only sort of negative that I could find, and then I'll do a roundup of the both. So, and by the way, I haven't really done a versus here because there's so much to the Casper Network and Casper Labs that it's very hard. I don't really want to do they said this and then H by this and this, because for two reasons. One, this video is already very long and it'll be even twice as long. And secondly, because I talk about Hedera a lot in my videos, and so you should already know or have a very good understanding of where we are with Hedera. But I will give you an example on this, because if this is the first video of mine you've ever watched, please understand that, yes, this is amazing being mentioned in Nasdaq News, and it's fantastic having all these engineers, and it's incredible, you know, having these use cases and these cool businesses, but there are many equally cool businesses building things on Hedera that I've mentioned regularly. And what Casper doesn't have, and I'll cover this in the roundup, is the governing council, but we'll get to that. And so so this is a couple of the sort of downsides, if there are any, in Casper. Making the price, I alluded to it earlier, making the price predictable is so important for if you're going to attract big business and commerce, because everything they do is based on forecasts. So a decision they make today is based on the information they believe to be true about the next week, 3 months, year, and some institutions 5 years, 10 years, even 100 years. So if you own or you run or you operate or you're high management level in a big company, what happens tomorrow has to be as possible, as humanly possible, predictable. And not being able to properly forecast your costs is a massive sort of negative for large businesses and corporations. And so, yes, Casper, you can future-proof your costs, but you have to do it through futures contracts, and that is a complicated thing. It's another layer of process. Although perfectly manageable and not impossible, far from impossible, it's just a little niggle that Hedera just simply doesn't have. And it's so simple to fix. I cannot understand for the life of me why projects don't price their transactions in a fiat currency, because it's what we pay for everything in anyway. And ironically, they've got to use the fiat currency to buy the Casper in order to pay the fees. So why not just why not have the fees in fiat in the first place? The other thing to say is, although the prices are the same, 301 CSPR coin or 301 dollar, they're not, because if you're smaller and you're not messing about with futures, or your future contracts come to an end, at some point you are going to be affected by the price. It's inevitable, because it has to be on somebody on the other side of the futures contract, or whatever mechanism you put in place. There has to be a yin to the yang, heads to the tails. And so, to give you an example, let's say, for example, today CSPR coin is $1. And so we know the cost is going to be the same as Hedera, 3 noughts, 1 cent. But what if it 10x's? So because of this, ironically, because of the business that's causing all these transactions to fit in the first place, it draws massive attention. Google say, we're using Casper exclusively. That's it. We're running everything on Casper, and so on and so forth. The price goes up. The person who pays the biggest price for those price rises caused by Google is Google. Because Google is doing 15 billion transactions a day on Casper. That has caused massive attention, loads of people are piling into the project, the price goes up. At some point, they have to buy new futures, they have to buy new coins in order to facilitate the transactions, and they end up paying the price of their positive input into the platform. And that you can mitigate that a little bit, you can delay that a little bit, but at the end of the day, it will come out in the wash. You will have to pay the price of your own success on the platform. And so, not a massive point, but an important one. It's very, underline 3 times, hard to find super simple, straightforward, top line facts on the Casper website, on any of the paper or information around the Casper website, at Casper Labs, even studying, because I look at all sources. I look at people who are ambassadors for Casper. I've watched a lot of Encash officials' YouTube videos about Casper. Nobody is talking about exactly how much energy is used per transaction and for the different transactions, exactly the costs and how you might mitigate the price rises or drops in the future, and how that's specifically done and at what cost, and how that might not be possible over a long period. And nobody is really talking about a really truly concrete, solidified maximum or minimum transactions per second scale. It's just not there. They just need to put some simple infographics on the website, and it would really, I believe, for such a small thing to do, the output would be huge from people who are trying to learn about the project. Yeah, so I just put here, Nick Cage, Encash, hours of footage, no talk on ISO. Oh, this was the sticking point that I found. I cannot find anything where it says whether Casper is ISO 222 compliant. That is basically something that you have to be in order to even be considered as a future option for banking. So for banking, transferring funds, storing money, paying, and all the things, all the activities that banks are involved in order to even be considered a software for that solution, you have to have this level of security, and it's ISO 222. If you have a cryptographic platform that is ISO 222 compliant, they have at least a ticket to the competition. And so they have a chance of being future-proof and making it. If you are ISO 222 compliant, these projects do not keep that a secret, because it's a big tick in the box, and Casper has gone to some length to keep that an absolute secret. And I still, to this, as I'm filming this, I'm ashamed to say I don't know the answer. I cannot find it. If you know the answer for sure, backed by fact, please leave a comment in the description below, in the comments below, and a link, and I'd love to have a look at it and see where you found it too, because these guys who are also making a lot more footage about Casper than I have previously, no mention that I could see. So roundup, I think that as I'm becoming more and more sure of what I've always been saying, which is that there's going to come a time where, much like in the .com bubble, a recession outside of cryptocurrency, a property bubble pops, whatever it might be, that will affect the global economy. And when people are stood there trying to decide whether to hold on to their meme tokens, their HEX or whatever it might be, Dogecoin, or pay their rent or mortgage, they are going to sell those coins eventually. It doesn't matter how tribal they are, they will sell those coins to buy food. They will sell those coins to pay the mortgage. They will sell those coins when it comes down to sort of the level of needs, shelter, food, and so on, warmth, protection, etc., and then entertainment and on and on. When it gets down, when unfortunately the recession hits bad and it drops a bit, the things that are going to come out of this are the projects that are future-proof through security, BFT, ABFT, ISO 222 compliant, and more importantly, the projects with real-world use cases. I think Hedera Hashgraph is absolutely one of those, if not the forerunner in that group, who also have presented themselves, like Casper, as a welcomed home for big business institutions and governments alike. And I also think that as that happens, things will get easier and easier. And just this week, we have seen Hedera Hashgraph go from 39 to the 36th in market cap on coinmarketcap.com, just purely through nothing else than 3 of the other coins disappearing. So that everyone moves up 3. And we're going to see more and more of that. And Hedera might even just make it to top 10 by default, just because there aren't any other people ahead of them, have just fallen away. And the more use case a platform has, and the bigger the ecosystem, and the more they're talked about on Google, and all of these things add up to a really, really solid project. I think Casper is absolutely fantastic, and I am going to be investing in the project. And I've got to say, I think with Casper Labs takes this to a draw. And the reason I say a draw, and Casper could have won this, but the reason Casper didn't win this is the governing council of Hedera Hashgraph. Because they could have gone to this meeting, and it's fantastic that they spoke and people heard what they had to say and got exposure to Casper. So now there are many billionaires and heads of state that are aware of Casper. But I've had loads of those meetings. And if you've ever been in business, or if you've ever had a job where you have to speak customer facing, thousands of people visit PC World, Bed Bath & Beyond. How many of those people actually go on to buy? It's a small percentage. And so this could have been a complete disaster for them, for all I know. Maybe they handed out 1,000 leaflets and maybe they were all put in the bin as they went outside. So maybe they got nowhere. It's very hard to solidify all of this positive stuff. How many people read that article in that NASDAQ news? And of those people, how many of them went on to actually do something or to investigate on the website, couldn't get any information? And then how many of those people did they actually lead? Is it all positive? Yes. Can we quantify it in a measurable way that means I can say, this is going to result to that? I don't think anyone can, if they're being honest. However, Hedera Hashgraph has a signature and people flying all over the world to meet up once a month at their own expense to be on the Hedera Hashgraph Governing Council. That is action, that is skin in the game. That is, and people get disillusioned because they expect Google to be sort of cheering on Hedera Hashgraph as if they haven't got anything else, or they're not a massive organization. No, but when it comes down to it, they have shown backing, commitment, time investment, money investment, talking about it. The interview I did with my friend Carsten Sorensen, Dr. Carsten Sorensen at the London School of Economics, we were talking about what's actually involved in being a governing council member of Hedera Hashgraph, and it's really time intensive. So they've really got to care, or at least have somebody assigned in a department that cares and commit to something. And they're not, yes, they're going to go away and trial different projects. Of course they are. They're a huge business. Why wouldn't they? But they are invested, both financially and emotionally, in Hedera, and that is concrete, it's real. And so, for me, we'll call it a draw to be fair, because I really am a fan of Casper, and some of the stuff, particularly of their labs and the guys building on the stuff, some of their things are really, really cool. A couple of them are ahead of other projects I've seen. They've got customers that are ahead of other platforms' customers. And so that'll be interesting to watch how that plays out. But I also like that they've really future-proofed themselves, because there's an ethos on Casper, or it certainly appears to me as an outsider looking in. There seems to be an ethos in there that I haven't really had a feeling of before. I've had it a little bit in Hedera, but nowhere else. And that is openness and the desire for interoperability. A lot of these projects mention cross-network, cross-chain. Now, you go to a project like Solana, and if you don't get a Solana tattoo within a week, you're out. That's kind of the mentality over there.
and that has no future. You know, it's been proven time and time again that collaboration wins through. And so, you know, well, America, they say, united we win, divided we fall. And I think that will prove true here too. So really, really interesting. I'm sorry this isn't a very controversial video, but I'm here to find out the truth. And the truth, my truth, is that these are two incredible projects. And if you said to me you can only invest in one, it would definitely be Hedera Hashgraph, just because they win a little bit. They're ABFT, BFT. They've got the Governing Council member signed up, done, bosh, real. They have some massive use cases already being tested on the testnet, and they have some really big ones coming live very, very shortly. They're a little bit older, they're a little bit more mature on Twitter, you know, and they've gathered more followers even on a like-for-like basis. They're trending far higher on Google, and you know, so I think that they've got a slightly higher price. They didn't fall quite as hard as Casper has, and so I just think by a hair, Hedera win this one, but it's as good as makes no difference a draw. If you have enough Hbar that you're comfortable that you no longer need to buy any more Hbar, or you're invested as you want to be, or you've got money to spread around, then I would definitely consider Casper if you're looking to diversify your portfolio a little bit, because nothing in life is guaranteed. And tomorrow morning we could wake up and Hedera has been hacked and fallen away. Nothing is impossible, and you have to protect yourself and your family and your wealth. And so if you are looking to, I understand completely if you're not looking to diversify, by the way, but if you are looking to diversify, there are several projects that I like very much, and Casper has just been added to that list. I hope you found this informative. It was a lot of work for me, but I'm glad I did it. As always, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.